Bhagavate Shri Ramana Namo Ramana. In this, the Tuesday Satsang, it has been our practice to meditate on Bhagavan's teachings for about 20 minutes and then practice Atma Vicharam for the succeeding 20 minutes. And the last 20 minutes or so will be talked by our President, Dr. Sarada. Now, the topic is Ramana Gita, on which Akka is giving the pravachanam. And the satsang will conclude with the offering of Apara Satchit towards the end at around 8 o'clock. We begin by taking verses from Guru Vachaka Kavai randomly and meditating on them. We are getting verse number 691, the power of yoga. Verse number 691, the power of yoga. The attention that perceives the deceptive sense objects should subside in such a way that the antics of Sutta river, the frisky ego mind, cease completely. Having achieved this subsidence, one experiences clearly in the heart the light that is not light and the sound that is not sound. This is the power of yoga. There is a very nice and important quote from Day by Day about the Spurana. This is one of the earlier parts of Day by Day and one of the special quotes from Devaraj Mudaliar, which you won't find in talks or the other books. So this has come later, isn't it? Sometime later. So about that light which is not a light and sound which is not a sound, Devaraj Mudaliar says, I, Devaraj Mudaliar, was reading Vichara Sangraham, Self-Enquiry. I came across the statement that something is shining or sounding as I in the heart. I have always had the doubt what exactly the word Spurana means. So I asked Bhagavan and he said, it means that which shines or illuminates. I asked, is it not a sound we hear? Bhagavan, yes, we may say it is a sound we feel or become aware of. He also referred to the dictionary and said, the word Spurana means throbbing or springing on the memory, flashing across the mind. Thus, both sound and light may be implied in the word Spurana. Everything has come from light and sound. I asked Bhagavan what it is that shines, whether it is the ego or the self. So what it is that shines as I, because holding this I only, we are asked to leave the I am the body idea. What is it that shines? Is it the ego, which is of the form I am this body thought? It is ego is a thought which has this triputi of thinker, the process of thinking, and the object of thought. So I am the body is the ego. Is it the ego or is it the self? Is it the Atma Swarupa? Which one? This Purana. Can we call this Purana as the ego or as the Atma Swarupa? Bhagavan, he said it was neither the one nor the other. It is neither the ego which has the triad of thinker, thinking, thought, which is not Ullapurul. The thinker, thinking, thought is consciousness divided into triad. Therefore, it is not the Ullapurul. It is not the self also, which is the Ullapurul, completely free of any kind of thought nature. It is neither the one nor the other, but something in between the two. This Purana is in between the Atma Swarupa and the ego. It has the spurati nature of both slightly forgetting yourself, then remembering, forgetting yourself, remembering, forgetting yourself, remembering, or wanting to know and knowing, wanting to know, knowing, both not going outside oneself, but as a self-contained power. Therefore, it has some amount of ignorance embedded in it. That is, it becomes a Shakti by within itself forgetting what it is and then remembering. Forgetting, remembering, therefore the outward ignorant push and the inward graceful pull, both are present in the Spurana. In the self, none of this is present. I asked Bhagavan, what is it that shines, whether it is the ego or the self? He said it was neither the ego nor the self, but something in between the two. That is, something which is a combination of the I, the self, and the I thought, the ego. And that the self is without even this Spurana. Spurana is the Atma Shakti, without holding which you cannot come out of the triads. You cannot come out of the triads and dyads without having the support of the Aham Spurana. But then the Aham Spurana itself is not the finality of the self. It has to quieten down, which in Vichar Sangraham, Bhagavan says to Gambiram Seshaya that hold this Puranam and keep quiet. Then, like the fire that is lit up in a camphor, having burnt all the camphor, having burnt the I am the body idea in you, this Purana also will go quiet. Purana will have no need to shine, is what Bhagavan says. So let us go back to the verse and digest this. That the attention that perceives. So what is the power of yogam? Yogam means to join. Yoga Kshemam means what? Yogam means to attain a new state. Kshemam means to be able to abide as that. Ananyas chintayanto ma yajana paripasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamya. That is, those who have the ananyas chintaya, they are the nityabhiyuktanam. They are always worshipping me in the ananya manner, in who am I. Their yoga, the attainment to the self, and the kshemam, the abidance there, the Ishvara himself takes on its head. Usually it is read that yoga kshemam means their worldly cares will be taken care of by the Paramatma. Of course, that too. But then, what are we seeking as yogam? We are seeking the yogam as being shown that which is this Purana and beyond the self, beyond this Purana, the self. So to unite with that and to abide as that, both are given when you have the Ananyas Chintayantam. that Ishvara is not done upasana as something other than the I. Ishvara is worshipped as the power that permeates the other and the self, therefore is searched for in the self. Let's go into the verse. The attention that perceives the deceptive sense objects should subside in such a way that the antics of Sutta river, the frisky ego mind, cease completely. So, how does Bhagavan bring us to this basic sadhana? He takes us through Upadesha Saram and takes us to the fact that even if you have the dhyanam as the Ajadaraya Srotasa Samam, there is Aniya Bhava. So Bhagavan says, Veda Bhavana Soham Ityasav Bhavana Bida Pavanimata. That means Aniya Bhavatil Avanahamagu Ananiya Bhavame Undipara Anaithilum Uttamam Undipara. We are skipping a few steps and going that anything you perceive as another, if you hold, then you are flouting the rule of self-enquiry. If you understand, then obviously the senses are always taking you towards the other. By identifying with the senses that I am seeing, I can see only the other. I can hear only the other. So I can taste the other object. So the senses, by their very nature, are like the five blind men trying to describe the elephant by holding on to some parts of the elephant. Even when all the five data are put together, you don't get the full information about the elephant. Therefore, since the five senses, they all give limited information. Even if you put together all of them in the brain, still you will have a limited knowledge only. Therefore, the awareness or the consciousness or the attention has to be withdrawn from the senses. In Atmavicharam, what happens is, Bhagavan says in Ulladinarpadu, the verse is 28. 28th verse, Bhagavan says that Elumbum Ahandai Elumidatte Niril Virinda Porul Kana Vendi Murugudal Pol Urdamadial Pechu Muchadaki Kondulle Arandariya Vendi Mari. That means by turning inward, conserving the energy that would have been dissipated in the senses and the breath and in other thoughts, and making the attention so single pointed that you have only one object, that is the source of the I thought or the Hridaya. What happens is, once you do that, this non-attachment to sense objects is an automatic byproduct. That is, when you do self-enquiry as your primary practice, you will start feeling how the senses are becoming inward turned automatically. Venkateshji, Murali and I, we were traveling to Tiruvannamalai. This was about 5 years ago, but all the three of us were at least practicing self-enquiry for a long period of time, and we know how our senses were behaving before the Bhagavan's grace brought us to self-enquiry. What happened somewhere near Hosur, the car was being driven by Venkateshji. We were going at 60 or so, it was town limits. In the bridge, the flyover, there was a median, and two youngsters were leaning on the median and talking to a girl who was facing the other side of the road. That she was facing not the traffic where we were driving, she was facing the other side of the road. Suddenly the conversation ended and she didn't know where she was and suddenly turned and entered the traffic. And we were the person, our car was just approaching her at 60. And somehow Venkateshji veered around her, swerved around her, avoided her. But all the three of us, we had a spike. We just said, oh, or some shout we made. But in few seconds, the whole episode was forgotten. Many years ago, our mind would have lingered around that sensory spike. But what we could observe later was, by the Bhagavan's grace and the sadhana, that naturally itself, like that 2-3 episodes, a sudden incursion of somebody unexpected in the traffic, it's not that the senses have become dead. The consciousness is alive. So what alertness is there, it was there, and the avoiding was there. But our average consciousness comes to such a level that there is a natural turning inward from the senses. That without any effort, the sensory objects are no more having a sway over the attention. That is the natural byproduct of Atma Vicharam. The breath turning inward, the Kevala Kumbhakam, happens automatically when you start doing Atma Vicharam for long periods of time. Because to observe thought, you have to go to a subtler subconscious than the breath subconscious. See, the breath itself is a subconscious activity because it is an involuntary activity. In deep sleep also, where your average conscious mind cannot enter, the breath is going on by Ishvara Kripa. That means, when you start observing the thought, you are obviously into the subconscious in relation to the waking state conscious. When you observe the thought, you have gone below the depths of breath. And automatically there is Kevala Kumbhaka of the breath energies. So, this yoga of turning away from sense objects and turning inward the breath energy happens automatically to those who are practicing self-enquiry as their primary sadhana. Slowly what happens? Your average consciousness itself does not tinker in that area. That it does not get involved in that area, and the feeling is that those sounds, those sights are happening within us, within the mind field that they are happening, and as they are happening within, there is nothing to do about them. There is nothing to do about those sense objects or about the sensory sounds, and one is naturally turned inward. They cease completely. Having achieved this subsidence, one experiences clearly in the heart the light that is not light. Who comes up to receive us when we forgive, when we do tyaga of these dissipations and turn inward to the source of the high? There Soham Spurti Taya Arunachala Shiva, the Ishvara Shakti, which is this Purana, rises to meet us. Though it rises, it is not the ego, says Bhagavan, I think in verse 30 of Ulladunarpadu. Nanar Enamanamul Nadi Ulanandave, Nanam Avantale, Nanamura, Nanan Tondrumundru, Tanaha Tondrinu, Nanandru Porul Pundramaditana, Porul Pungi. That is, this Purana will also shine and rise, but it is not the rising of the ego which will be connection with an identity with the body. This Purana also rises and shines, but then it is not the ego. Hold this Purana. It is in fact this Purana that burns, that is the real doer. All the Triputis, none of them are the real doer. The real doer of all actions, the real knower of everything, is only this Purana. All this time, if the ego has felt it has done anything, it has done nothing, because it is going to become non-existent. How can it do something non-existent? How can it have really done anything? So the real doer of all the things that happen is only this Purana. What you felt as you did sadhana will be realized to be actually done and carried out by the inner pull and completion of the Purana itself. And once one understands this, one will be able to hold this Purana, erase all the I am the body idea, which means the entire loka, what Ishvara will have as a body, from that itself this Purana will free. And the self doesn't have the Deha Bhavana or the Loka Bhavana. Till then, this Purana should not be left. We should hold it and free ourselves from the I am the body idea. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana. Let us sit in Atmacharam for 20 minutes or so. Revatima, you can set the time for us. Thank you. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the satsang are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita, of a compilation by Ganapati Muni of the answers given by Bhagavan Ramana to questions of various seekers of truth. And we are, by his grace, on the final chapter, the chapter which is Siddha Mahimanu Kirtanam. Siddha Mahimanu Kirtanam, the glory of the Siddhas. And we were meditating on the verses 7, 8, and 9, rather 7 and 8. And we will go on from 8 to verses 9 and 10. So the verse which we were meditating on was Vigata Moham Alobham Abhavanam Shamita Matsara Mutsavinam Sada Bhava Mahodadhi Tarana Karmani Pratiphalena Vinaiva Sadodyatam. So Bhagavan is described here as one who has crossed over or has none of the negative emotions in him. Moham, Lobham, Abhavanam, Matsaram, no jealousy, no delusion, no misconception, Abhavanam. And it implies, so when the Muni says no Abhavanam, he has no misconception. Most of the problems arise in the world from misconceptions, beginning from the primary misconception that one is the body. So he has no abhavana. And Muni does not say he has no bhavana, but Bhagavan says bhava shunya sadbhava sustitihi. So there is no bhavana at all. At the same time, Bhagavan also says that Ajnasya Vijnasya Cha Vishwamasti, the world is there. So the bhavana is the abheda bhavana, is the adhara. So abhavana cannot come, says Muni over here. And since he is beyond all emotions, how is it that he is active in this world? It is for the purpose of taking everyone across this great and difficult ocean of becoming Bhava, Bhava Sagara, Bhava Mahodadhi, Tarana Karmani, in order to help everyone cross this ocean. And this compassion we saw in the previous meditation, that this compassion of Bhagavan is natural. Muni himself says in a verse in Chatvarimshat, Na karuna gunaha. Karuna is not your guna. Tava vidham pate hridaya tejasaha sahaja bhaivate. It is very natural for you. It is the natural experience of karuna, just as a tree gives shade to every comer by nature, not by choice, says Murugana Swami. And in the next verse, Muni is a little bit biographical in a way. He is referring to himself because he was having the vision that Bhagavan is Skanda and he is Ganapati. So in this verse, the verse 9, he says, Mata mameti nagaraja sutoru pitham. Mata mameti. Ganapati said, mother is mine. Then Nagaraja Sutoru Pitham, sitting on mother's lap. Nagaraja Sutta. Nagaraja is Himalaya. Himalaya Sutta, daughter of Himavan. He is having her as a Pitham, means he is seated on the mother's lap and he is telling, Mata Mameti, mother is mine, he said. So, what did Skanda says? Naganane bhajati yahi pitamameti. So, Skanda worshipping the Naganana, the one who has the snake on his face or near his face. That one who is decked by the snake garland, to him, Skanda said, Naganane bhajati, praising him. Skanda said, it is okay if mother is yours, father is mine, pita mameti. And when he said, Ankam harasya samavapya, Shirasya nena sanchumbitasya. What did Shiva do? He picked him up and he kissed him on his head. Says, Sanchumbitasya, Shirasya nena sanchumbitasya. To whom did he do this? Girirandhra krito vibhutim. He did this to one who has destroyed or split the Krauncha hill, says highest Parvata, but Himachala, she is the daughter of Himachala. But who is Shiva? He is the greater of Achalas. He is Arunachala himself. And Professor K. Swaminathan says, from the lap of the mother to the embrace of the father, Bhagavan went. Because he was in Madurai. He had his enlightenment in Madurai. And then where did he go? So he sprang from the mother's lap to the father's embrace, says Professor Swaminathan. And here he is described, Bhagavan is described as one who is a destroyer of the Krauncha hill. The Krauncha hill is on the path when Muruga is proceeding to the destruction of Surapadma as a Deva Senapati, he has to cross the hill Krauncha, which is an Asura. So it is one may say it is one of the biggest obstacles on the path to self-knowledge. So whichever is the biggest obstacle on the path to self-knowledge, whichever may be the biggest obstacle, which is the biggest obstacle, Bhagavan says, the identification with the body is the biggest obstacle. And what has he done to that? He has cut it asunder. Giri Randhra Krito. So there is the Giri, which is the Asura Giri, and there is Himachala Parvata, which is the respected and veneered and father of Prakriti herself, father of Parvati herself. And there is Shiva, the Achala. So the identification of with the body makes this into an Asuric hill of Krauncha. Whereas if there is a devotion to the Supreme, then the Supreme manifests over there and that becomes Himavan. And finally, what is Shiva doing? Shiva is taking this Skanda who has cut away that obstacle into his own embrace and keeping him as a very self after kissing him on the head. So Bhagavan is opening out the path for us of cutting off the ego through self-enquiry and saying Pita Mameti. And what is the difference? Bhagavan says there is no difference between Mata and Pita. Not at Arunachala, they are Ardhanarishwara. But for our understanding, we may say that Parvati is the Chit Shakti and Shiva is Sat. The Sat, the underlying. So, though the two are not different, Sattaya hi chit chittaya hyaham, Bhagavan says, but one has to cross the Chit Shakti and go back to the Sat. This Nandakumarji tells us often when he is talking about the Aham Spurana. The Aham Spurana is the Chit Shakti. But the Aham Spurana is a pure manifestation as Chit of the Sat. The Sat is the base. So, beyond the Aham Spurana, one has to dive back into the Sat, which is being depicted here as jumping to the Father. And when one does so, then the Father takes one in his embrace. The path is through Chit, no doubt, because Bhagavan got his enlightenment in Madurai. One has to go through the Ahamspurana, and then when Ganapati says Mata Mameti, when it is said that the world and its actions, everything happens by the Chit Shakti, one must be ready at some point of time to say, yes, it's all right. Of course, it is that marvelous power. Adishaya Shakti, says Bhagavan himself. But Adishaya Shakti of what? Of the self. The self is more important. The self is all-embracing. And its absolute perfect silence is all that I want. When one dives in saying that I do not want anything else other than the self, then the self takes us in its embrace and blesses us with its loving kiss, the loving kiss of silence, of stillness, of fullness. Sanchumbitasya, that beauty, that love of the self is depicted here very beautifully by the Muni. Because it is very important for us. We tend to think that there is joy outside. We tend to think that there is love outside. We tend to think sometimes that when there are difficulties which we are facing, that the self does not love us, that the self is passive, that the self is unconcerned. No, the silence of the self is not rock-like. Mauniyai karpol malaradhirundal maunamidamo arunachala, says Bhagavan. Your silence is not the silence of a rock. It is the silence of fullness, the silence of love. So, the difficulties which we may seem to face in our daily life are not outside of the all-embracing, all-encompassing, and ever-surging love of the self. That is the beautiful, loving image that we get over here. And then Muni actually is talking of the Skanda Tattva. In another sense, it is said that the Spurana itself is Skanda. It is the mystic experience of some of the people that the Spurana itself is actually Muruga. It is actually Skanda, because Skanda is born out of the light of Shiva. Even in the mythological legend, though the legends differ from one mythology to another, the connection with the Shiva Agni is always constant. So, Skanda himself is, you can say, if you look at it from that perspective, Skanda is the Ahamspurana, and that Ahamspurana says it is all right. If it works in manifestation, let it work. If it is to do the work of mother, let it do. If it is to be in the embrace of the mother or the lap of the mother, let it be. If not, I am more than happy to dive within and merge into the Father, the Sat. So, when one goes to that point, and if one does not want to use that power for anything in the world, which is mother's manifestation, and if one turns back and says, Father is mine, then that Ahamspurana will also get absorbed into the self. That Ahamspurana, which has cut across all the other evils, all the other manifestations, like Rauncha, will then be embraced by the self. Such is the beautiful sharing of Ganapati Muni with great love for Bhagavan and for all of us. Om Namo Bhagavate Shivaya.
Namo Ramana. Apara Satchit Sukavahirashi Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabiram Chintavihinam Hrudi Chintayami